I have always believed that love is a promise you make with your eyes wide open. You look at another person with all their beautiful flaws and you say, I choose you. Today, tomorrow, all of it. You imagine the future as a shared story written in two hands. You never imagine that one day you'll be sitting in a quiet house, holding a cup of tea that's gone cold, and realize the person sitting across from you has no idea who you are. He looked at me this morning. A long, steady look from his chair by the window. The autumn light was catching the silver in his hair I've watched change over 43 years. His eyes, once the color of a summer sky, now a softer, cloudier blue, settled on my face. There was a curiosity there, a polite, distant curiosity. He smiled, a small, gentle thing. You're very kind, he said. Thank you for the tea. And my heart, that old, tired muscle, didn't break. It simply sighed. A deep, silent sigh that seemed to go all the way down to my bones. This is the man who held my hand through the birth of our son, who whispered silly jokes in my ear at his mother's funeral to make me smile through the tears, who knew I took my coffee with exactly 1.5 sugars before I even said it. He forgot my coffee. He forgot our son. He forgot the jokes. Now he thanks me for the tea. They call it a journey, his condition. A path. But it's not a path we walk together anymore. It's a path where he walks ahead and I follow behind, watching the man I love leave pieces of himself along the way like scattered leaves. I pick them up. I hold them. I try to remember the tree they came from. This is my story. It's not a story about a disease, not really. It's a story about a woman named Helen and a man named Robert. It's about the life we built, brick by brick, memory by memory. And it's about what happens when the bricks begin to crumble and the memories are no longer shared, but carried by one that I met Robert in the spring of 1978. I was a librarian, lost in the quiet world of fiction. He was an engineer, building things in the solid, nonfiction world. We met at a friend's backyard barbecue. He was trying to flip a burger and it landed in the petunias. I laughed. Not a polite laugh, but a real, snorting one that made me cover my face in embarrassment. He just grinned, picked the burger out of the flowers, and said, Well, I've heard of garnishing, but this is ridiculous. That was him. Practical, with a quiet humor that snuck up on you. Our first date was a walk by the river. We talked for 3 hours straight, about everything and nothing. He told me about wanting to design a bridge one day. I told him about my favorite novel, where the hero wasn't a knight, but a gardener. He listened. Really listened. 2 years later, we were married in a small church. My dress was simple. His hands shook when he put the ring on my finger. We moved into a little house with a porch that sagged on one side. Robert fixed it. We painted the kitchen a terrible shade of yellow because the can was on sale. We loved it. Then came Michael, our son. He had Robert's serious eyes, and I like to think, my curiosity. Our house filled with the sound of childhood, toy trucks on the floor, bedtime stories, the frantic search for lost homework. Life was a beautiful, chaotic symphony. Robert worked long hours to build his career, to build that future we dreamed of. I chose to step back from the library. It wasn't a dramatic sacrifice. It felt natural. I wanted to be the one to hear Michael's first words, to soothe his nightmares, to be the steady heartbeat of our home. I packed lunches. I attended school plays where Michael was a stoic tree. I balanced the checkbook, planted roses, made 1,000 casseroles. Robert provided the foundation. I tried to make it a home. We were a team. On weekends, we'd go for drives. Robert would point out bridges, explaining their design. Michael would fall asleep in the back. I'd watch the landscape roll by, my hand resting on Robert's shoulder, feeling completely, utterly sure. The years turned like pages in a favorite book. Michael grew up, went to college, started his own life. The house got quieter. Robert talked about retirement. We made plans. We'll travel, Helen, he'd say, tracing a route on a worn atlas. We'll see all the places you read about. We dreamed of Italian coastlines and Scottish highlands. We bought guidebooks. We saved. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I noticed the first tiny crack. I was reading one of those guidebooks, dreaming of pasta and vineyards. Robert was working on a crossword puzzle. "Helen," he called from his chair. "What's a 7-letter word for a long journey?" "Pilgrimage," I said without looking up. A minute passed. "No, that's 10 letters. I put the book down. "What's the clue again, love?" He looked at the paper, then at me. A faint frown appeared between his brows, a place I used to kiss to smooth it away. I can't remember." He laughed it off. A senior moment. We both did. He was only 62. It was nothing. But the nothings started adding up. He'd go to the hardware store for light bulbs and come back with batteries. He'd forget the name of our neighbor, the one he'd known for 20 years. He'd pause in the middle of a sentence, the words slipping away like smoke. One evening, I was making his favorite stew. He walked into the kitchen, his face pale. "The project files," he said, his voice tight. "The Henderson project. I can't remember the final calculations. I was reviewing them just yesterday." I wiped my hands on a towel. "It's okay, Robert. They're in your study. I'll help you look after dinner." He didn't move. He looked at the simmering pot, then at the kitchen walls, that awful yellow we'd never gotten around to repainting. His eyes held a confusion I'd never seen before. A lost, boyish fear. "Helen," he whispered. "What's happening to me?" The doctor's office was cold. Sterile. Words hung in the air like cold metal. Mild cognitive impairment, tests, monitoring. Robert sat very straight in his chair, holding my hand so tightly it hurt. He was an engineer. He dealt in facts, in blueprints, in certainties. This was a fog he couldn't chart. At first, we fought it together. We bought brain game books. We took long walks, which the articles said were good for memory. I made lists for him. Lists of chores, of phone numbers, of our daily schedule. He'd pin them to his desk, follow them with fierce concentration. It was a new project. A terrible one, but one we would tackle. But the fog kept rolling and he forgot our anniversary. Not just the date, but the concept. When I mentioned it that evening, a little sad, he looked genuinely bewildered. "But we always celebrate in the fall, don't we?" he said. "Our anniversary is in April." He started getting angry. Small, frustrated angers. A missing wallet, a misplaced key would send him into a rage. He'd slam a drawer. Once he threw a magazine across the room. This was not my Robert. My Robert was patience. My Robert was the calm in the storm. "Why did you move it?" he'd shout, his face red. "I didn't move it, love. It's right here." "It wasn't there. You're hiding things from me." The accusations were the hardest. They were little knives. I, who had spent a lifetime organizing his world, was now a suspect in it. The travel brochures gathered dust. Our plans, once bright and full of color, faded on the shelf. Our world began to shrink. First, we stopped talking about the future. Then, we carefully stopped talking about the past because it became a minefield of things he couldn't recall. Conversations became practical, simple, about the weather, about dinner. The day he couldn't remember how to use the remote control for the television, he cried. Silent, heavy tears that rolled down his cheeks as he stared at the plastic gadget in his hands like it was a piece of alien technology. I sat beside him, took it from his hands, and held him. He sobbed into my shoulder, a deep, shuddering sound of grief. I rocked him like a child, my strong, bridge-building husband.
"I'm sorry, Helen."
"I'm so sorry." "Shh," I whispered, my own tears falling into his hair. "It's just a remote. We'll figure it out." But we both knew it wasn't about the remote. The official diagnosis came later. Alzheimer's disease. The word landed in our living room and sat there, huge and dark. We held hands on the couch, the same couch we'd bought when Michael was a baby. We didn't speak for a long time. This was the new map of our lives. And there were no bridges across this. My role shifted. I was no longer just a wife. I was a caregiver, a scheduler, a memory keeper. I gave up my book club, then my weekly coffee with friends. The outside world became a distant hum. My entire universe was this house, and the man in it who was slowly disappearing. Michael visited when he could. He lived a few hours away, with a demanding job and a young family. His visits were bright, painful bursts of normalcy. He'd try to talk to his father about sports, about old times. Robert would smile, nod, sometimes tell a story from 30 years ago as if it happened yesterday. But he couldn't remember what Michael did for a living. He'd ask the same question 3 times in 10 minutes. I saw the pain in Michael's eyes, the helplessness. He'd pull me aside in the kitchen. "Mom, this is too much for you. You look exhausted. We need to look at options." Options. That meant facilities.
Care homes.
A place where they were trained for this. The word felt like a betrayal. He's my husband, Michael. This is my place. But what about your life, Mom? I'd look into the living room, where Robert was quietly staring out the window. "This," I said softly, "is my life." The turning point didn't come with a scream. It came with a whisper. It was a rainy Thursday. The kind of gray day that seeps into the house. Robert had been quiet, subdued. I was in the kitchen, sorting pills into his weekly container. A rainbow of capsules and tablets to manage the unmanageable. I heard a rustle behind me. He was standing in the doorway, holding a framed photograph. It was our wedding picture. Young, smiling, impossibly hopeful. He looked from the photo to me, back to the photo. His eyes were clear for a moment, piercingly so. It was the look he used to get when he was solving a complex problem.
"Helen," he said.
His voice was calm, steady. "Yes, dear?" He pointed to my face in the photograph. The young, smooth face of the girl I once was. Then he pointed at me, standing there in my apron, my hair gone gray, lines of worry and love etched deep. "Who is she?" he asked. The world stopped. The rain on the window, the clock on the wall, the very breath in my lungs. Everything stopped. I tried to speak. Nothing came out. I put down the pill container, my hands trembling. That's me, Robert. That's us. On our wedding day." He studied the picture again, his head tilted. He shook it slowly, a small, definitive motion. A scientist dismissing faulty data. "No," he said, gently, almost apologetically. "That's not you. You're nice. You take care of me. But he touched the glass over the young Helen's face. She was my wife. I loved her very much." He said it with such certainty. Such heartbreaking, absolute certainty. He looked at me, the woman, who had shared his bed, his worries, his life for 4 decades, and he saw a kind stranger. "What happened to her?" he asked, his voice now laced with a childlike confusion. I walked over to him, my legs feeling like wood. I took the photograph from his hands. I looked into the eyes of the young man. He was the man who loved that girl. "She's right here, Robert," I whispered, my voice breaking. "She grew older. She stayed. She's right here." But he was already losing interest. The clarity in his eyes clouded over again. He patted my arm absently. "That's nice," he said. "Is it time for lunch?" He wandered back into the living room, leaving me alone in the kitchen, clutching the cold glass of the picture frame. That was the moment. The silent, shattering moment. The diagnosis was a fact. The forgotten anniversaries were wounds. But this was an erasure. He had compartmentalized me. The young bride, the love of his life, was a memory in a frame. And I, the present-day Helen, was just the kind lady who made his lunch. I slid down the kitchen cabinet onto the floor, the cold tiles seeping through my clothes. I didn't wail. I hugged the photograph to my chest and let the silent tears come. A river of them. For him.
For me.
For the us that no longer existed, except in my own solitary memory. I had given up everything, my career, my hobbies, my freedom, to care for him. And in doing so, I had slowly disappeared. I had become a caregiver, a shadow in my own home. And now, to him, I had disappeared completely. The final, cruel joke was that the man I was sacrificing for no longer knew the woman who was making the sacrifice. The rain tapped on the window. A steady, lonely sound. Don't know how long I sat on that floor. The light changed. The rain stopped. A patch of weak sun appeared on the tiles. And a strange thing happened. In the hollowed-out silence after the shattering, there was space. A calm. The worst had happened. The fear I'd been running from. That he would look at me and not know me had come true. And I was still here. The world hadn't ended. The sun had still come out. I got up. My joints ached. I put the wedding photo back on the shelf, right in the center. I washed my face with cold water. I looked at myself in the mirror. Tired eyes. Gray hair. The face of the kind lady. But also, still, somehow, the face of the young woman in that picture. Her hopes lived in these lines. Her love was the reason for this exhaustion. I made Robert his lunch. Tuna sandwich, apple slices, just the way he liked it. I took it to him in the living room. He was watching birds at the feeder. "Here you go, Robert," I said. He looked up and smiled. That polite, distant smile. "Thank you, dear." He didn't know my name, but he called me dear. It was a habit, a fossil of a feeling. I would take it. Something had shifted in me. The desperation to make him remember was a weight I finally put down. It was hurting us both. I was constantly testing him, prodding him, trying to drag him back to a shore he could no longer see. Remember this? Remember that. It only caused frustration, fear. That afternoon, I didn't ask him any questions. I just sat with him. When he pointed at a bright red cardinal and said, "Look at that blue jay," I didn't correct him. I just said, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" I stopped fighting the disease. I started loving the man who was here, right now. It wasn't resignation. It was a different kind of surrender. A surrender to reality. My husband, Robert, the engineer, the planner, the father of my child, was gone. Pieces of him surfaced sometimes. A dry wit, a preference for toast not too dark, a love of harmonicas in old songs. But the whole man was not coming back. The man sitting in this chair was someone new. Someone vulnerable, innocent, often confused. And he needed me. Not the memory of a young bride, but the steady, present kindness of the woman I had become. I called Michael that night. "I'm ready," I said. "Ready to look at some help." I hired a kind woman named Sophia to come 3 mornings a week. It allowed me to go for a walk alone, to rejoin my book club, to remember what it felt like to be Helen, not just the caregiver. At first, I felt guilty. But seeing Robert respond to Sophia's cheerful, professional manner showed me it was better for him, too. He wasn't straining to remember her. She was just a nice new person. One day, I came back from the grocery store to find Robert and Sophia at the kitchen table. They were coloring. Sophia had bought big, simple coloring books and a pack of crayons. Robert was concentrating fiercely, his tongue between his teeth, coloring a sailboat a wild, sunset orange. He looked up when I came in. A smile spread across his face. A real, recognizable smile. The one that used to crinkle the corners of his eyes. "Look," he said, holding up the picture, proud as a little boy. "For you." My throat tightened. I walked over and took it. "It's wonderful, Robert. I love the color." "It's for fur," he struggled, the name lost. His smile faltered. I placed my hand over his on the table. "It's for me," I said softly. "Thank you." He looked at our hands, then up at my face. The cloudiness in his eyes parted, just for a second. A flicker of deep, familiar warmth passed through them. A connection, not from memory but from feeling. It was gone in an instant, but it was real. It was enough. I had been trying to hold on to the man of yesterday, and in doing so, I was missing the man of today. The man who could still feel joy at a bright orange crayon. Who could still offer a gift. Who could still feel comforted by a hand on his. The grief didn't leave. It moved. It became a quiet companion instead of a screaming tyrant. I grieved in private. Moments. I'd look at old photos and let the tears come. But when I was with Robert, I tried to be in the present. In his present. A present that was often simple, sometimes sad, but could still hold moments of startling sweetness. He loved ice cream. He loved the feel of warm laundry fresh from the dryer. He loved listening to old jazz records. His world had become small, sensory, immediate. And I chose to step into that world with him. Robert sits by the window most days now. He talks less. But he is peaceful. He holds a soft blanket I knitted, running his fingers over the bumps of yarn. He watches the seasons change the tree in our yard. I sit with him. Sometimes I read to him, not from the complex novels I used to love, but from simple poetry, or even children's books with beautiful pictures. The sound of my voice seems to soothe him. The other day, I was reading a story about a bear and a honey tree. He was looking out the window, and I wasn't sure he was listening. I finished the story and closed the book. The room was quiet, filled with afternoon light. Slowly, he turned his head from the window. He looked at me, his gaze soft and unguarded. "You have a nice voice," he said. Then, after a pause, he added, "It feels like home." I reached over and took his hand. His skin was thin, papery. I held it gently.
"It is home, Robert," I said.
"We're home." He didn't know my name. He didn't know our story. He may not have known I was his wife. But in some deep, wordless place beyond memory, he knew I was safe. He knew I was his harbor. And in that moment, that was the truest, most real thing in the world. I gave up everything. And my husband forgot who I was. But in the empty space that was left, a different kind of love grew. A love not built on shared memories, but on sheer, steadfast presence. A love that asks for nothing in return, not even recognition. It is the quietest, hardest, most unconditional love I have ever known. Our story isn't the one I thought we'd have. It's not the travel, the retirement dreams, the growing old together while reminiscing. Our story is here, in this quiet room. It's in the holding of a hand when the other doesn't know why. It's in the coloring of a sailboat orange. It's in the voice that still, somehow, feels like home. This journey took everything from me. It took my partner. It took my future. It took, for a while, my own sense of self.
But it taught me something.
Love isn't just a memory. It's not just a promise made in the past. Love is also a choice you make freshly every single day. Even on the days you are not remembered. Even on the days you feel invisible.
You choose to stay.
You choose to be kind. You choose to be the home for someone who is lost. And in that choosing, in that daily, quiet act of love, you might just find a strength you never knew you had. You might just find that while you were busy being someone's memory, you became their everything. And that, in the end, is a story worth living.